Chairman. Thank you very much. Very briefly, at the Berlin 2002 OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, I sponsored the first supplementary item on combating anti-Semitism. Also in 2002, I chaired a congressional hearing in Washington and proposed that the OSCE itself schedule a major conference on combating anti-Semitism. As many of you know, the Bush administration agreed, and U.S. Ambassador Stephen Menikes worked with his fellow ambassadors to make those conferences, because it became plural, a reality. The first conference was held in Vienna, followed by the conference in Berlin in 2004. And we are now at Berlin plus 10, and it is time to begin the assessment of where we have been and where we need to be. In Berlin, the OSCE adopted a comprehensive plan of action, including chronicling acts of anti-Semitic hate, Holocaust education, trying to make systemic changes in our legal systems, and of course education so that young men and young women will be sensitized to the terrible bias that underlies anti-Semitism. It was in Berlin that Natan Sharansky defined the newest emerging manifestation of anti-Semitism, which he described as the 3 Ds. First, demonization of Israel, the first D, denial of Israel's right to exist, and delegitimization, the third D. He said everyone has the right to disagree with Israeli policies, but very often those disagreements simply camouflage underlying anti-Semitic hate. I would point out to my colleagues that just 2 months ago, the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, released the largest survey ever on anti-Semitism. More than 53,000 people were surveyed in 102 countries, covering approximately 86% of the world's population. They found that 26% of those polled had deeply anti-Semitic views. The worst place of all, not surprisingly, was the Middle East and Northern Africa. We need to be doing more, Mr. Chairman, and I do believe with the 10-year anniversary coming up for Berlin, that very, very watershed event, we need as a parliamentary assembly to be redoubling our effort. Let me also say very briefly, I'd like to associate myself with the remarks of our colleague from Cyprus. There is a rise of anti-Christian belief as well worldwide. Pope Francis is right when he said the greatest persecution in the world today is against Christians. I held 50 hearings on persecution and human rights violations in China, where the Christian church, and Christians in particular, as well as some others like the Falun Gong, are terribly discriminated against and tortured. But it does happen in the OSCE space as well. Sometimes it's more nuanced, but it does happen where Christians are marginalized and left out. His points about Syria, I think, were very well taken. We know that Christians are being targeted simply because they are Christians, beheaded and killed in the most horrific of ways in that terrible fight. I just returned, Mr. Chairman, 3 weeks ago from Nigeria, and the extremist groups like Boko Haram, and I was in Jos last September, and I was in Abuja 3 weeks ago, and met with many survivors who have had their homes raided by night, particularly in the northern 3 states, but also below those 3 states. And we're told, one man I met in an IDP camp named Habila Adamo, he told me, I'll be very brief, a gun was put to his head, renounce your faith, become a Muslim or you die. He said, I'm ready to meet my Lord. He was shot, he survived with half his face blown away. That is the reality of what these extremist groups are all about. Thank you.